Welcome to Maddie's Monthly Foster Connection, a monthly webcast where we learn about topics of interest to those of us who are interested in starting or expanding new foster programs. Our guest today is Daisy Navin. Daisy Navin is a foster programs manager at LifeLine Animal Project, where she oversees foster program development strategy across 3 Atlanta shelters, including 2 high-intake municipal facilities. She helped grow Lifeline's foster program into one of the largest in the country, which placed over 13,000 animals into foster homes just in 2024. Daisy is passionate about low barrier fostering, matchmaking, foster relations, and turning everyday insights into meaningful change. She's presented with Maddie's Fund on foster onboarding and loves collaborating with other shelters to troubleshoot, innovate, and share life-saving ideas. Her work focuses around one question: what do fosters need to keep saying yes? Welcome, Daisy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Um, all right. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I'm really excited to present this all to you. This has been a huge project that I've personally taken on over the past like 7 months now. So it's very exciting to be able to share this information not only to those in my organization and in my immediate area, um, but also to other programs that could benefit from this. So today we're going to be talking about foster feedback, specifically through, sorry, let me try that again. Specifically through the use of a survey. So, yeah, just, our fosters are gold mines of information and just opportunity to learn about our program, our animals, everything like that. So, my goal for all of you today is to learn how you can tap into that potential, and I hope you can learn something. So, we're going to start off with a scenario. Um, Before I worked in animal welfare in college, I was a barista. So we are going to put on our little food service hats and be baristas at a busy coffee shop for a second. A customer comes up and they order a oat milk latte. You make the espresso, steam the oat milk, pour in the drink, and deliver it to the customer. But afterwards, they come up to the bar and say that their latte tastes off. So if you're faced with this scenario in the context of working at a coffee shop, what would your initial response be if someone says, "Hey, so sorry, um, I'm not confident that this is oat milk. I'm super lactose intolerant, so I'm concerned I can't drink this." How would you react to that? And just take a moment to think. So, things you may have considered are, did you give them the right milk? Uh, I said that twice. Is the espresso dialed in? So, did you follow the right steps to make the actual coffee taste good? And that has so many different factors. Did the machine that pulls the espresso and steam the milk get cleaned? Are others having the same issue? Is this a standalone issue? Do they usually go to a different coffee shop and they usually get a completely different order? And they don't even know what to expect? But you don't just assume that this, or at least you shouldn't assume that this one customer is difficult and refuse to remake their drink. And you don't assume that the coffee shop altogether is terrible and you just are going to close the entire location and change career paths. So, all that to say, when things go wrong in the rescue world, we tend to default to extremes. We'll minimize or we'll catastrophize, especially when fosters come to us about things or volunteers as well. So we'll say stuff like, ugh, this person's such a Karen. They're overreacting and just unhappy about the rest of their life and they're taking it out on us, and we just don't need to address this. Or we say, like, we sent 2 urgent dogs out to foster and both of them bit somebody. So we obviously cannot send urgent dogs to foster anymore. And we have to shut down our entire euthanasia list foster program. But those aren't necessarily the best conclusions to draw from these kind of situations. The truth often lives in that in between. So in animal welfare, Our fosters are our customers. They're constantly giving us data, things to consider, and our goal isn't to, shrug it off or ignore them, but it isn't to panic and like, really worry about it either. We have to listen to every single foster that comes through. We have to investigate and we have to recalibrate our systems to make sure that we are handling things appropriately. So, listening isn't just the nice thing to do, there's strategy behind it. I'm a big strategy girl. And so when I stepped into the foster programs manager position a little over 10 months ago, I was really overwhelmed with how many people were coming to me looking to just be heard. And we didn't have any data up until that point to really make decisions of what path I should go with being in this foster programs manager position. Assumptions, when you don't have data to prove anything, um, can shape our decisions. So when we're looking at foster programs, which is such a life-saving opportunity for our animals, we just need to take more things into consideration and make sure we have the organized data possible to present to all of our parties that are all of our stakeholders in these situations, um, to make sure we're making the most educated decisions for our organizations. So a little bit about Lifeline and our foster program. Kelly touched on this, so I'll just fly through this, but that is Miss Peaches, if you know her. She did come from our foster program. So we love her very much. We are a nonprofit organization that has 3 locations, and 2 of them are high intake county shelters in Atlanta, Georgia. So we are very, very full. At any given time, we have over 1,000 dogs. Specifically, we struggle with overpopulation of dogs. We have over 1,000 dogs between all 3 shelters in shelter, and then 1,000 dogs in shelter or in foster homes as well. So we are a very, very large organization. Typically, over 50% of our animals are in foster at any given time, and over 50% of our animals will go into foster care at some point during our stay. On top of myself, we have on-site managers along with coordinators. So it's a big machine, and takes a lot of people to make all of this happen. But there's also a lot of considerations when you have so many different locations, so many different opinions and experiences. You have to think about how you're going to gather all that information to make conclusions. So when I moved into this role, my initial conversation, I got a lot of questions, concerns, and fosters were asking for a lot of transparency and clarity. And all of that's really hard to know, like, what's the best way to begin. Beforehand, I only had the insight of one of our locations because I worked specifically at our Fulton County shelter. So then having oversight over 2 more shelters was like, oh my gosh, there's so many other factors at play. And there were discrepancies between one united program between 3 locations. There were gaps between what staff assumed at each location and what fosters felt at each location. So my goal was to find the highs and lows to drive better support for our fosters and help them be heard, but also provide structure for our staff. So, more about those goals. Uh, when I was creating a survey, I not only thought about what I need to know now, but what I want to know in the future. So the goal was to establish a baseline for foster experiences to track progress in the future. And this would help us develop, KPIs and just different things to drive our programs in those annual goals and track that retention and satisfaction year over year. So this was my first year of data. I'm very curious to see how I'm going to be able to compare this year and next year based on the changes that we made and how else we can build from there. I wanted more consistency, especially if you're a foster-based program or you have multiple brick and mortar locations. It can be really hard to get everyone on the same page. So finding where those discrepancies are and building on them was a big goal of mine. And I also just wanted to gather honest feedback. I wanted fosters to feel heard because they did want to feel heard. And they had some really good points of things that needed to change. So I did give people the opportunity to respond to our survey anonymously, but they could also provide their email. Um, and that way you're just giving fosters the liberty of saying what they're most comfortable with in the most comfortable way for them. So, overview of the survey sections, and we can go more into depth with this, but I'll just briefly go over it. We looked at demographics, so which shelter did they foster from? What type of animal did they foster? Were they fostering adult dogs, adult cats, puppies, kittens, medical, what have you? And how long have they been fosters for? Um, so just kind of getting that baseline of how much experience do they have with our organization. We're talking about maybe next year adding in like actual demographics about what zip code they live in and maybe their annual income so we can make sure that we're hitting all of our communities and accessible for anyone that wants to come in to foster. So, program reflections, we asked how people felt about their last foster experience again and if they would foster again. We asked their personal highs and lows, like what do they struggle with the most with fostering? And then we had an open ended prompt where people could just spill everything about their past experience. And what I noticed is based on how people responded to this open ended question, it really set the tone for the rest of the survey. So we got a lot of people who are just like, we can do no wrong. There were a lot of people who went the more constructive route. And then there are people that definitely went the more frustrated, mad, angry route. So you'll see a little bit of everything. The third part was some key area satisfaction scores. So essentially looking at the different parts of fostering with our organization. How do you rate it on a scale from 1, this was the worst experience of my life, to 5, this is the best experience of my life. You can't make any changes to make it better. And then the end, we talked about some general polls, preferences. So I asked how they want to be contacted about fostering and received pleas and got some really interesting insight to that. Although most of the insight was like vary your foster please. People should be able to find out about animals in need in a bunch of different ways, which seems pretty consistent with a lot of the conversations in the foster side of the world. We also had an opportunity for staff and volunteer shout outs. So if a foster had a great experience with a staff member or a volunteer, we then were able to track that information. And I actually passed it on to different team members when they got shout outs to just give them a little bit of a morale boost. You know, it's thankless work. So the more opportunities you get to let your team know that they're doing a good job, the better. And then any suggestions that they have. And our fosters all have very different backgrounds in terms of what they know with animal welfare. So it was really interesting to see some people who had great ideas versus people who were suggesting things that we were already doing and they weren't aware of. Or other people who were just like, why don't you just put all the dogs in a truck and send them up north? Like, that tends to be the recurring question that I know a lot of Southern shelters get asked is just why can't you send them somewhere else? So, we were able to kind of find out just from those suggestions alone, how much information do our fosters have on like our practices and what we do. So the methodology, how we collected these responses in a very like scientific article term. So we overall got 445 responses. And I think it was total 450, but 5 people filled it out twice or something like that. And they were collected over the course of about 30 days over a jot form. We sent out these emails, or we sent out pleas to fill out this survey through ActiveCampaign, which is our mass email, think MailChimp, uh, that kind of thing. And we sent it to over 4,000 contacts over email, and we put it in our 3 Facebook groups. We did have about 5,000 fosters in 2024. So, we did our best to try and get all 5,000 people to at least look at that survey. And you know, getting about 10% of um, our foster base to fill out this very new survey did feel like an accomplishment to me. Um, However, we did notice that some people who responded fostered in 2025 since we started a little later in the year. And some of the people fostered before 2024, and they were just so excited to finally have a place to express their ideas or concerns or anything like that, that they went ahead and filled it out anyways. So just something to keep in mind. I won't talk too much about our individual results because I want to focus more on um, changes that we implemented, changes that you could implement, and that kind of stuff. But I did want to briefly go over some results and analysis that I thought were interesting. So we use JotForm. JotForm reports can help you find certain statistics like median, like what's the most middle number, mode. They can make pie charts, that kind of stuff, which is very helpful for quick deduction. It also connects with Google Sheets, so you can make charts like pie charts and bar graphs and stuff on top of that. And then open-ended responses, I did analyze using ChatGPT Pro, and I did that by downloading the Google Sheet as a CSV and then asking the questions that I wanted to find out to ChatGPT, but obviously making sure that I said it in a way that I knew I was going to get accurate data and could fact check it. But that was really life-saving in terms of my time. So extrapolating that data, quantitative, we looked at satisfaction scores. So who said 4 or 5 out of 5? What percentage of fosters were experiencing certain types of barriers? And then qualitative data. So how are we looking at certain, like, what are the recurring themes of, you know, stuff we're seeing, and looking for those patterns of repeated pain points versus one-off issues. I used it to look at strengths per location and also where certain locations were struggling and what can other locations learn from those uh, issues or strengths. So numbers will show how big a problem is. Stories help us understand why it's happening. So here's an example of some of the data that we gathered. We asked them, how long have you fostered with us? And it was very cool to see that the majority of people who were responding were newer fosters. Like over half of them had been fostering for less than a year. 3/4 were under 2 years. So it was really cool to see that we're getting a lot of new fosters. And that does check out with how many fosters that, we are sending out now. So caregiving status, we also asked, are you currently fostering? Are you taking a break? Or will you never foster again from us? And 11.2% said they will not foster again. Some of these people, they did adopt their dogs, but some of these people did have concerns about their experience, and were able to give us more insight into why they will not foster again, which was nice. And we could also look at that data per location. So is one location not willing to foster again because all their fosters adopt immediately, versus other locations, like, are they having difficult experiences for one reason or another? So here's a busy slide. The interesting trend that we saw with our foster retention was that we were losing the most fosters uh, from that under six, uh, fostering for less than 6 months category. So there was a huge jump between like over, 1 in 5 fosters were leaving after 6 months versus that number going down uh, the longer that they fostered. So, with looking at our survey, we were able to deduct that early intervention with new fosters was crucial to their success. And the recurring complaints that we heard from people that were not looking to return were communication. They had a bad medical experience. They were frustrated with our processes. Sometimes, people were just mad that we're adopters welcome. or they're burnt out or feeling overburdened. So, some of the other themes we saw on that note were most fosters were emotionally invested and proud to foster and be a part of our organization, which was really great to see and be able to pass on to the teams. However, they felt like a lot of the time they needed quicker, clearer communication. Obviously, with a program of our size, we can be a little bit slower to connect with certain fosters, long response times, and unclear next steps when they had certain situations happen were uh one of the um larger feedback buckets that we received. They wanted access to veterinary care that's timely and clearly communicated to them, and only 43% of them felt like they were involved with important decisions that involved their foster pet. And I do think that veterinary decisions are involved with that, just because we as an organization allow our fosters to be involved with the entire adoption process. So they're doing the meet and greets, they're saying whether or not it's a match, as long as it's within adopters' welcome policies. But to offer that amount of freedom to a foster and then only 43% say that they feel involved with these decisions, it was a concerningly low number for me. We got a lot of feedback that they need help marketing. And overall, they just wanted more support, especially when they end up with a foster who maybe never had been out of the shelter before, and they're experiencing some, rough decompression or rough, behavioral concerns that are going to impede adoption. So, what do you do with this information? You have it, cool, it's fun to look at. What now? So, we determined which teams and stakeholders needed to be involved to implement meaningful change. I made a presentation that honestly I stole some of the data from to make this, or and slides from, and involve the teams that, like, you know, this would all relate to, which is honestly every single team in the shelter, the data behind foster parent high and low. So we are no longer going to them and saying, hey, our fosters are experiencing this. And they were like, that's just like tough luck. Here we were able to say, hey, here's how they're feeling. This is why. These are the trends we're seeing. And it inspired our teams to want to look for more change. Um, and then we also use that presentation as an opportunity to propose solutions that range from quick fixes to more ambitious long-term ideas. So these are a little heavy, but I did want to briefly go over some of the changes that I have made. And hopefully, with all of this information, you can also see how fast I was able to implement meaningful change, even though I've only had this data for less than 3 months. So I created a in-person monthly meetup for fosters in partnership with a local coffee shop. I literally emailed a coffee shop in the area that I knew loved dogs, and I said, hey, could we hang out one Saturday every month? They said, heck yes, we would love that. No fee, no anything. Come use our patio. Please bring dogs. They give us a 10% discount for coming, and it's really helped build community. It's been such a fun event. We've had 2 so far. We started it in May, and we found it offered a lot of like additional support for fosters who have harder animals. Like there's one person who's like, I don't really have the opportunity to make foster friends because I have a reactive foster. I can't bring him to adoption events. And that was like the main way our fosters were meeting other fosters. So, they literally sit down with me, they can chat with each other, they can ask me questions, and it's really helped morale, I've found. And we've even recruited some baristas to be fosters. um, we also increased in-person and online training opportunities. So we've done some bottle baby kitten and puppy trainings in advance of kitten season. And we also just started monthly online marketing Zoom calls with our marketing team. So our marketing team is actually going and saying, hey, here's some tips on how to get more uh, interest in your foster through marketing them. So that's been really helpful. We updated our foster orientation videos to be more clear on expectations for fosters and our available resources. We don't require an in-person orientation. We just say, hey, watch this video. That's how you get started. So we increased its accessibility made sure fosters were able to find it clearly, and made sure all the information in it was easy to understand. So they knew clear next steps of what was expected from them. Similar to making just like community part of our culture, I'm looking to also start in-person orientations, and I'm curious to see if this will affect the foster retention for our newer fosters and maybe even affect our turnover rate from applications to people fostering by offering more in-person opportunities with staff so that people feel like they are able to connect with the people behind the scenes a little bit more. We're also implementing Dubert Connect, if any of you have heard of that. I recommend looking into it and seeing if it could be a match for your team, but essentially they can help take on some of that foster support through an external uh, animal welfare based organization. And it's going to give our team more time to work one-on-one with fosters. And Dubert Connect essentially will talk to fosters for us and implement or create cases for each of our fosters. So then our team can look to see where each of our fosters needs support and why, so that their team can be or their time can be more prioritized when working with foster families. You can make automatic workflow emails through the system to help create clear communication channels and expectations. And then they also have a Mighty Network social network, if anyone's heard of that website. It's like the perfect combination, in my opinion, of Facebook and Slack, and it also has trainings on it. So we're going to have the opportunity to get some lessons on there, quizzes on there, and fosters can even earn badges based on trainings completed. And I look forward to when fosters are earning badges, then rewarding them with foster swag that I'm working on with the marketing team right now. So we're still in the onboarding stages of this, so it's all built out. It's just a matter of actual execution once we dot our I's and cross our T's. So I look forward to reporting back on how that is all going. Um, and we've also updated uh, our foster separation protocol. So essentially, if fosters are misled, upset in any sort of way, how should we handle them? We had a handful of very grumpy responses that, like, for every single category of, like, rate this on a scale of 1 to 5. They just went down the entire line and did 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Not like, dismissing the fact that they could have truly believed that everything was a 1 out of 5. But from reading all those inquiry or all the responses, I realized that they likely would have had a better experience with earlier intervention from us and clearer expectations. So, one of the goals with updating our disciplinary uh, protocol was just making sure that they understand the why of why we're stepping in and guiding them or unable to work with them anymore. So, just something to keep in mind that, there can be things that empower fosters, but then also it can be like, okay, how do we handle the grumpy people who we are separating from? Because yes, they have valid experiences and they might be grumpy for real reasons. How can we avoid more grumpy people in the future and not minimize their experiences? So, if you're going to take anything away from this, your fosters are a well of insight just waiting to be tapped into. Even if you have a small program or don't have a program that receives a lot of complaints, don't wait for a crisis to assess experience, because there might be stuff that you're just unaware of. There could be strengths that you don't know you have, and then you can use that information to help others. Or there might be weaknesses that you were unaware that you have, and you assumed everyone knew everything that you then can potentially fix. And AI, when used mindfully, can help us save more lives by turning foster feedback into actionable insights. So, this is your to-do list. This was a little timeline of what I would recommend if you're looking to do something like this. This will all be provided at the end, so don't feel like you have to rush to write this down or anything. But you want to define your goals, get a platform, execute, make sure you're reaching all your fosters, have a timeline, And also set a time where no one bothers you, where you can just have an hour of time to do this. I blocked off chunks of my schedule where I was just like daisy hyperfixating on survey result hour. And just, turned off my phone and handled that. And that was some of the times that I received the most insightful information, was just being able to not worry about anything else going on, even if it means locking yourself in a closet. Like, get it done however you work best, I guess. And then make sure that you're not only gathering this information, but you're reporting it to parties that need to hear it. So stakeholders, like, donors, if you need to, your board, whoever needs to hear this information, make sure you are getting it to them, and go with recommendations of what could be fixes. Some of these might work well for your organization, but some, might not be what you need. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. I have some of my information here. Feel free to connect with me on anything. The QR code goes to the Google Sheet of all of our foster questions that we asked. So that is free to look at. This link also goes to it. And just a quick shout out to Rachel Jones. I learned about foster surveys in the first place from her adult dog course through Maddie's University. And also Maddie's Fast 15 foster survey, if anyone's looking for a quick alternative to making your own, is a great option.
Thank you so much, Daisy.
Yeah,
That was
thank you.
amazing. We have some questions.
Awesome.
All right. Vicky is asking, based on your observation that the open-ended question before the rating questions seem to set the tone for the scores, do you plan to adjust either the framing of the open-ended questions or its location in the survey form next year?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't I I think giving them an opportunity to respond open-endedly also allows them to reflect in advance of their other answers. So even if they are going to react one way or another, I do think however they're feeling and however they respond after that is valid and truthful. So I don't think I would change it, just because I want I want people not to feel like they're just filling this out to fill it out. I want them to be insightful and actually reflect on their experiences. And even some of my best fosters gave me really, really valuable feedback and constructive criticism. And I think, allowing them to have those open-ended responses really allowed for that.
Awesome. Julie Lenny's asking, she's curious whether the results from your survey aligned with the Maddie study on fosters in 2017, which is funny because we were just talking about it. Or we were just talking about the foster police survey.
Yeah, ooh, do you have the link to that survey? I could look at it real fast. Um,
Uh, I can pull it. Well, I mean, I can pull it up. But one of the things we did a foster police survey. It wasn't in 2017, but it was maybe a couple years later. But one of the things we found was that fosters one or like the organizations that had the largest foster programs were sending foster pleas in multiple different ways, multiple times a week. So that it was like they were just like the more ways you can do it and the more times. And that's exactly what Daisy found, which I think was super interesting to me too. Um,
yeah,
and
I'd be
then
curious to see the 2017 survey. I'm sure I've seen it at some point, but I can't
I
remember
I
it.
was like 2017, I think we did market research. And so I'm not sure it was exactly, although we've done several different studies. We maybe I'll take a look at the studies later on and see. And maybe put the answer on Maddie's Pet Forum. Oh, okay, the market research. Actually, the market research was only on people, or it was the questions in the market research were different than the questions that Daisy asked. So, but yeah. All right. Did the foster data reflect the type of dogs being fostered, like puppies versus seniors, or behavior or medically challenged?
Yeah, so let me show you this real quickly. Getting a behind the scenes tour. Um, so I won't show people's personal information, but this was the categories that we said. What species or special needs have you most frequently fostered? So people could select more than one. Um, and we did adult dogs, medical recovery, puppies, kittens, adult cats, medical recovery cats. And we also include hospice. That's not something we do too often. But uh, we didn't necessarily pinpoint seniors. We do have seniors in foster care, but we hold them pretty much to the same standards as either a medical recovery or adult dogs. So we didn't give them their own category. What I will say is if you use Jotform, and I will hide this so I don't show people's personal information, but Jotform um, has these great data reports that you can see I did it anyways. Um, but you can see like actual percentages of like who is like what's the population filling out. And if I wanted to then filter these, I could say, okay, let's look at species includes, and then some people put in open-ended here, it looks like. But if people said kittens and litters, uh, how satisfied are they? And so you can actually take the information that you get on Jotform and automatically look for trends just by using this filter option. So I can see, I mean, just looking at the slide right away, that compared to our total population, it looks like kitten and litter fosters are more likely to rank 1 out of 10 for how satisfied they were with their most recent foster experience. Um, just from looking at this data for a while, I know that a lot of these individuals unfortunately did have some sick kittens that did not make it. So definitely one thing that I did recognize is we might want to work a little bit more with our kitten fosters on how they perceive kitten death, and just how can we emotionally prepare people for this so that they don't take it personally, they don't hold it against the organization or shelters or anything like that. But instead, like, recognize, we all work so hard, and unfortunately, kitten death is one of those junky things that will likely always be around if you're fostering kittens.
Thank you. That's so interesting to see, to be able to see all of that, the data and, you know, all right. Here's a question. How do you handle a situation where another department in your shelter has labeled a foster as annoying when it's clearly a personality issue with one of that department's staff members?
Ooh, I am a bad person to ask this because I'm spicy. Um, I do recommend if it is an internal concern, if you do have an HR department or a manager to go to, handling it professionally in that way. Um, if if I allowed my spicy self to handle it, I would probably just play the devil's advocate because honestly, um, I like it is so common for, a couple of people just to be like, I hate this foster. Like this foster makes this job so hard. You know what? It is true. Like fosters don't no part of our system exists in a bubble. Everything interacts with each other. So even if it is a personality conflict, let's, try and get to the bottom of it. Why is the foster annoying? Is the foster annoying because maybe they aren't guided to the right resources by the team? So they keep asking the same question over and over, but maybe that staff member doesn't know that you have a resource site that has all the information that the foster is asking, that they can refer to as opposed to interacting with this team member or something like that, Um, I I do think it's important to reflect on both sides, but also just being like, you know, able to talk with the foster or the staff member to give them like a fuller image of the whole situation can help a lot.
Thank you. Um, uh, let's see. For the caregiving status survey responses, did you call out oh, this is a really good question because when you told that story a couple of weeks ago when in the Foster 50 webcast about the dog and of the people who didn't you like when you said you don't call your list, it changed my entire I like thought process on that whole thing. So please tell the story when I finish reading the question too. But for the caregiving status survey responses, did you call out fosters who had joined your roster but not yet became an active foster? I'm wondering if there, oh wait, no, this is different. I'm wondering if there's a fourth opinion to add to next year's survey, although your onboarding process for fosters may be different than ours. We approve fosters, but then it can be weeks or months till they select their first foster pet to take home.
That is interesting. I totally would consider tracking people who have not yet fostered with us. Uh I told Kelly I never get rid of people on my foster roster. People who applied to foster March 2020 are still receiving foster pleas, even if they've never fostered before. So I think it could be a really insightful way to kind of see maybe hesitations between people who haven't started fostering yet, or what the slowdown is. Um, I'd be curious to see about that. But to Kelly's point, one of the reasons that was so rewarding that I don't remove people is this woman who must have signed up to foster in like 2021 or something, and she had never taken an animal home, responded to one of my foster pleas where I literally just put 16 pictures of dogs. I said their name, I showed their picture, I said how much they weighed and their sex, and that was it. That was all the information I applied and said, or provided, and said, let me know if you like any of them. And to that, someone responded, "Oh my gosh, I know that dog. That was my friend's dog. I didn't realize they had to give him up. I'll come and I'll adopt him." And so someone who had just been passively on my foster lists then saw a call to action to help and save a dog's life. And honestly, that dog probably would have been on the urgent list the next week. So it was a very rewarding experience of like why you should never count anybody out from being a foster, even if they don't show up.
Thank you. Um, Nancy says, great webinar. Do you supply fosters with pet food, nutrition, and supplies to repeat fosters that need support, but not extra expense?
Yes. So we do provide basic supplies. It's very much on a as needed basis, but we try and provide every single foster with at least a starter bag of food, and then it's up to them to come back. We supply all veterinary care. It's just a matter of like, convenience is always a really hard topic when it comes to veterinary care. We supply all heartworm prevention, flea tick prevention. Um, they're seen by our vet to or our foster team to receive vaccinations. Um, but yes, we do our best to, if people want those supplies, get them to them. And we're actually starting a new partnership that's going to also make getting food to fosters easier. And in the future, one of my plans to help with that, because sometimes it's just a matter of people don't want to come to the shelter and wait to like get a bag of food or something. Um, I'm going to start bringing bags of dog food to our um, monthly foster community meetings. So people at these meetings can come get a bag of dog food. I ordered Adopt Me leashes from Amazon. So I'm going to have Adopt Me leashes to hand out to people and bags of dog food just to continue to offset that um, cost. But a lot of our fosters do end up deciding to buy their own food. But we do give them a martingale collar 100%, a leash, crates as available. We do have a foster budget, so we can pull from that. And we also do regularly ask for donations from our community with our foster program in mind.
Awesome. And this is more of a comment right in line with what you were just saying. Leah says, I've been in rescue for 8 years, and I've always believed that good rescues and shelters should provide food, supplies, veterinary care for the fosters who open their homes and hearts. These fosters already give so much, like their time, gas, laundry supplies, toys, treats, and most importantly, their love, completely free of charge. Covering the basics should be 100% the responsibility of the shelter or rescue. Okay, let's see, with 3 minutes. We got a few more questions. Do you have the foster administer the vaccines or take the animals to a vet? Or how does that work?
It all goes through our staff. So we do require animals to come in and either be seen by our foster team or our vet team to receive those vaccinations. So we can put them into our shelter system.
Awesome. Vicky is asking, are you brave enough to tell us what your foster program comms email open rates are like, and or if you try to segment your communications like to active fosters with marketing tips versus segmenting foster pleas only to folks who aren't actively fostering?
Yes. Honestly, I think most of the time a broader net you can set the better. But let's see. Um, I have pretty decent open rates according to our marketing team. One thing I do is I send a monthly newsletter, which does pretty well. Um, and that goes out to everybody and just covers everything, and shows upcoming events. Um, we don't do it so much as active fosters with marketing tips. We more so we send everything to everyone if it's going to be upcoming support, because you never know if there's someone who's hesitant about fostering just because they haven't seen that you provide support for one thing. So if someone is like, "Oh, I don't want to foster dogs because I feel like then I'm going to be marketing them and I'm going to overshadow the urgent dogs," or something like that. If you then show like, "Hey, we're having a marketing seminar where we're actually talking about how to, successfully market your foster, and then also how to handle that alongside the urgent dog panic, if you will." That might be the difference between someone fostering or someone not fostering. But for our foster please, we will we kind of send those out to everybody, even our active fosters, because you never know if our active fosters are talking to their friends and family and saying, like, "I'm fostering kittens, I'm having so much fun." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, well, let me know if you see any cute ones come in." And so they screenshot that and send it to their sister-in-law or someone, and suddenly their sister-in-law's uh, fostering. I'm trying to see if I can find a campaign that I can show you.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I really like these kinds of the emails from things like MailChimp and stuff, because you can really look at the data and figure out which emails are getting the most open rates. Is there a day of the week that people are opening more, and stuff. So
I can show that actually.
cool.
Trends, maybe. Uh, Open read. Okay. I don't think this is exactly what you're looking for, but I will show you this. We do have open by weekdays, so Wednesdays are by far our most successful day. Um, and we also have open by hour, so people really like opening emails in the mornings. And then if they are going to check their email at night, it is mostly around dinner time, it looks like. And then I can also see this based on individual pleas as well. So, um, oops, this is a tab that I actually don't know how to use, so sorry.
No worries.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. You can find a lot of information through Active Campaign. It is a little like clunky. Like you have to really know what you're doing sometimes to use it. But if you are looking for a really intricate mass marketing tool that you can also use not only for foster pleas, but sending out emails to people who have adopted and stuff like that. This is great. And if your foster like inquiry forms, questionnaires, applicants, whatever are connected to Jotform, Jotform connects with Active Campaign as well, so you can then immediately convert people who apply or adopt or anything like that into connections, and you can so you can get them into contacts and automatically get them on email lists based on how they responded to those inquiry forms. Yeah, you can see we
Thank
got pretty
you.
good open rates,
Yeah.
63%.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, we have we're a little bit over. I'm going to ask two more questions. We're going to put the other two in Maddie's Pet Forum. Um, but what kind of support do you provide fosters who have dogs with behavior concerns?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a mixed bag of support. We have our foster resource website, you'll find we have some both internal and external um behavior resources on just how to deal with basics. We work with some trainers and some volunteers who are behavior savvy, who can just like be a helping hand and provide phone support. We do have a good pup discount that if people want to invest in their own training, they're welcome to do that. Um, we also have training classes every Saturday at one of our locations with our behavior program manager. And those are group classes that will take on things like leash reactivity and stuff like that. And week by week, kind of work through skills with them. And what I like about our group training classes is they're less focused on sit, down, stay, paw, that kind of stuff. They're focused on how to make a dog that's coming from a very traumatic environment of a high intake shelter get used to being back in the real world and get used to like only having to interact with like primarily the person that they're living with as opposed to, the hustle and bustle of the shelter environment. So it's a lot of like touch and look, and just staying calm. We have online mini basic courses as well. But anytime anyone reaches out for support, they should be connected to one of our behavior team members or a volunteer trainer
Thank
if we're
you.
not able to assess them ourselves.
Thank you. And how do you handle fosters going on vacation while fostering? Do you have backup fosters, and how many animals per foster do you place?
Ooh, yeah. Uh, temp fosters is definitely something that we're navigating right now. One step that we've taken to assist is we have a foster parents group, but then we created an even more low barrier group than like our foster parents group is everyone that's filled out the foster agreement has an active foster that is a restricted community. We created a Lifeline pet sitters group that anyone interested in fostering can join because pet sitting for current fosters is one of the best ways for people to have a great first initial experience. So I can link that group here, but people do post like every single day in this pet sitter and also foster takeover group, and it is like I I run that group very strictly. All my other groups I'm kind of like whatever about, but I run this group very strictly where it can only be people who are asking for animals who are already in homes to go into another home, either for babysitting or takeover. Our teams will sometimes help with takeovers specifically, but when you have so many animals, it is really hard to pull pet sitters. So essentially, we really rely on our fosters to find those takeovers, and it also makes the most sense because they know how those animals are in the home best. Um, we will sometimes do foster pleas, and we do collect information of people who are interested in being pet sitting fosters on Google Sheets, but or on our excuse me, our initial foster inquiry questionnaire. So we have that information. We can segment by that information in active campaign, but we mostly really push those people to join our Facebook group if they can, because it is such great uh it's such a great resource.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Daisy, and thank you
Thank you
to
for having
everyone
me.
watching today's webcast. Any questions well, we do have several questions that we were not unable to get to today, and we'll put them in Manuscript Forum. Daisy's going to be available for the next few days on MPF to continue the discussion. So please feel free to post more questions there. And thank you all, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.